Hey guys, I'm Michael Allen for TravelCostaRicaNow.com real estate section, man. Welcome to our new channel. Our new channel is going to have a lot of info on here. We actually have a lot of info on here now, but they're in playlists. So we're adding new content all the time. We're kind of growing it slow, but there's going to be a lot of great info on here. We would appreciate a subscribe to help us grow this channel, because I think if you're thinking about moving, living, and especially building or doing anything with real estate, this is going to be a great resource. And Dan, congratulations, you are the first original content on this channel for the interview. All right guys, Dan has been living here as long as I have, which is about 15 years. He's very can we say expert? I don't know what we should say on that. He knows, heavily experienced in the world of building down here in Costa Rica. He's helped he's been managing construction sites, helped people build their dream houses, all of that. He knows a thing or two. Anyway, Dan, thank you.
Thank you.
We are gonna talk about just building. People thinking about building here, and I just want to start off, like, all things considered, if everything goes right, like, is building cheaper than buying something pre-existing?
It can be.
Would it be okay? We got to.
It can. I mean, if you obviously finding a brand new finished home that a builder is selling you. The builder's making a profit on that, right? So that part is true. In general, if you can find something already done, makes your life infinitely easier, and I do recommend it for that. And of course, you do pay, because if you have a construction project, you're going to be invested for quite a bit of time, months, if not close to a year, sometimes in some cases.
Okay, so let's take, like, you know, our friend Bob's house, which you helped build.
Sure.
Okay, so you helped that from the ground up.
Yeah, absolutely.
How much cheaper was it I mean, he did that pretty inexpensively, right?
Sure.
I mean,
he did, but he also invested a lot of his own time, because he did a lot of the landscaping himself, things like that. But yes, it's
if it's done right, what would be like the percentage difference from somebody like, okay,
if
a friend
it's done
Bob
right,
built a
at
house,
least 30 or 40% you could save yourself.
which is
Huge.
kind of big.
Right.
Well, but that leads into the next thing, because not everybody really should be maybe considering building.
I don't recommend it for most people. It's a lot of work. And not only is it a lot of work, but there are building codes in this country, some of which are very well, and on general, the level of structural construction in this country is good. Everything else, especially from our perspective of what we expect living from in North America or Europe, most people are a little bit puzzled by some of the things that get done.
So, who shouldn't build? And you just said most people.
Well, if you've never done it before and you don't know what you're doing, then it's going to come out a lot more expensive than you originally thought.
But is it possible, if you kind of know, like, would it matter, like, for instance, so somebody hears you and says, I don't know anything about building, but I know the house I want. Could this guy, Dan, do it? You know, is there a way to do it even if you don't know, like, the building?
Sure, no, absolutely.
I'm talking about two different things. I guess there's the person that comes down here by himself and tries to build, and then there's, you know, hiring somebody. Maybe you know a little building, maybe you don't, but you want to build your house the way you want it.
Well, it depends what your expectations are, is really what it comes down to, because you know, I've dealt with builders in the States before, and they just hand you a catalog, and the house looks like this, and you get to pick out this house, and it's going to look exactly like that, like something that you picked out of a magazine. And if you're trying to have that same experience, you're going to be probably a little bit disappointed, or it's going to be a lot more expensive than you originally thought.
So then what would be if you're a builder in the United States, mm-hmm. Hey, I'm going to move to Costa Rica, sure. And I know building. I'm a construction guy. I've done it.
Okay.
Is that helpful? I know it's helpful, but is it a hindrance because maybe they're thinking United States wise? You know what I mean?
There's a lot of materials here that generally are not recommended. For example, building out of pine, which most homes in the United States are built out of pine, framed up, put with drywall, things like that, hollow walls, and those styles of construction here, while they will certainly fit into the code, it's not a code issue, because they still use the International Building Code here. But what you will find is there's especially here, we live in the jungle, so this is a very specific climate. Also, our climate is a bit more intense than even other parts of Costa Rica, for example. And so we have 5 different kinds of bugs that eat wood. That's number one. We have a huge amount of humidity here, so drywall over time has a tendency to fall apart, weaken, disintegrate, things like that. So somebody who was a builder in the States who's used to building in that style, which most homes are built in that style, that will be a little bit more difficult to do here. Most things here are built in with cement because it resists the elements. They are built in wood, but when they build in wood, in many cases, they just build on the outside, and so you can actually see the studs. Style that's not my favorite, but it has a lot of advantages for this particular climate. So there are those types of things that they're gonna. I mean, obviously it's done. People build houses all the time, but they're going to be a little bit different than what people are used to in North America.
So what's the perfect storm of somebody that wants to build? So they got to be kind of knowledgeable in the field to begin with. They got to obviously get maybe a good team together.
They have to find somebody.
Because maybe they don't know Spanish. I mean, obviously
that's another
Spanish would be like a huge thing, right? Just knowing
Exactly.
Spanish.
Just knowing
your
Spanish.
laborers and all
That's right.
and how that all works. I mean, there's a lot of things, right?
Plus the style of construction here. There's the way most builders here, they don't do everything. So a contractor in the States, he'll say, I'm going to build you a house, and he will deliver you in key a finished product. There are builders here who do that, but the majority of builders actually want to do something they call obra gris, which means gray work. So that means they will put up the walls, and they will put up the roof, and they will pour you a floor, and they can put down tile if you want, and that's about as far as they go. And then after that, the finishing work, some people do it, but finishing work, we in North America tend to have a very high standard of what we're looking for.
We like the details,
We
Dan.
like the details.
We like the details.
And so that builder is not the guy who will typically handle the detail work. Then you end up paying somebody more like a furniture maker who can make everything custom, which is very nice in many cases, gives a better product than what we buy in the States. But he can build you exactly what you want, but now you're dealing with multiple teams to do multiple jobs.
Who's typically building the big expensive houses here? Is it big companies? Is it
There are
like the
companies-
beach ones, the millions of dollar houses that people might buy here? Who's building those?
Well, big hotels are built by building companies, but most people who build, I've worked with people who do condos communities, and they use a system pretty much like what I just described to you. That they will pay one company that just comes in and puts up the walls and the roof, and then they will hire a furniture guy who will come in and build all of the cabinets for them, and then they'll have a company who comes in and does the tile work. And so it's basically broken down more like that. I know we do that in the States to some extent too, but if you're planning on paying a contractor or even an architect to manage your entire project, architects charge 6% of the construction just to drop by to your construction once a week. And I've seen numbers of times where an architect will design a beautiful home, but then all the little details that don't necessarily get seen when the house is done end up being overlooked, and then that ends up creating more work for the owner later.
Wow, you're starting to just get me out of this. Why would anybody build down here?
I'm
In a
trying to
sense,
talk you into it.
You would really have to be somebody that really knows the game, knows Spanish, knows kind of the culture, knows the...
There's 3 kinds. Plus a lot of people don't even want to be here full time. So if you don't want to be here full time, if you want to be 3 months a year here, 6 months a year, do yourself a favor, buy yourself a condo. Then you can just close the door. It's already done. You have a condo station that takes care of those types of things. You don't have to worry about it. If you plan on moving here, a lot of people have there's a lot of new styles of construction that have become popular in the last few years. Like, for example, a first floor master bedroom. Now, there's nothing wrong with the first floor master bedroom, but you're not going to find a lot of Tico style homes that have first floor master bedroom, for example. So you're going to have to build that if that's what you want. What I typically tell people to do, if you're really serious about building, you want to live here, you want to have your own place, you want to design your dream home, that's fine. In that case, find yourself a property that has a little basic, ugly little house that you can live in, and you can be on site while the whole work gets done, and then you're going to basically have to watch the entire job all the way through. And that's what I recommend.
So, what's the major differences between building in the United States and building here, or in North America or Europe, as opposed to building here? Are there any glowing
Well, here,
differences?
for example, most things are concrete block. They now have a panel system that uses a styrofoam panel with metal. I use that system as well. But most construction systems here use a lot of concrete and steel. So the wood here is different than wood in the States, basically because they don't have gigantic plantations that are harvesting containers and containers of pine every year. And so the wood here, while it is beautiful and tends to be very good quality, is more expensive than wood that you would find back if you went to Home Depot, for example, and bought all the 2x4s for your construction. So most of the work here is done in concrete and steel. So going back to it, there's several things that we have to contend with when you build in Costa Rica. One is we have a lot of humidity. The humidity here is much higher than you would find in most places.
And that's huge.
It is huge.
It's huge. I don't know if people really understand that whole, bugs that eat the wood. No,
right.
It's not just termites here.
No. I mean, if you've lived in Florida or if you've lived in Texas or Mississippi, you'll understand that humidity. And we can have that level of humidity, but we have it all year because of the fact that we don't have a winter. So for example, if you leave closed spaces will develop mold. If you even have closed cabinets under your sink, they will develop mold.
Right.
If you have closets, they will start to develop mold if they're closed. So you have to consider those types of conditions, and everybody here is very nice about telling you, they will sell you something that when it's done, it looks very nice. But what you as an owner need to consider is what's that going to look like in a year or 2 years or 5 years, because you're responsible for it, not the guy who did the job. He got paid his first day and he doesn't care what happens to things. For example, overhangs in an area that it rains so much, like here, we live in the rainforest, you need to have a minimum of a meter of overhang around your house on all sides.
Yes.
Minimum. And they build a lot of low cost homes for people here, and the roof literally ends at the wall. You come back a year later, it's all covered with mold.
Yeah, the other problem, rain. I mean,
it rains constantly.
It's not just humidity. The rain is, you don't know. You might be getting a house, like if you bought a pre-existing house, there might be flood problems you don't even know about.
And we've seen those. Actually, Bob bought a house like that he had to deal with a flooding issue, where the people would literally just put a little piece of wood in front of the door so that way when it would rain really hard, the water wouldn't go in, but it doesn't solve your problem.
And they don't normally tell you about that.
No.
So what are some of the things, what are the must things? Okay, remember, we are talking about people that are going to build, though,
okay.
in a sense. So what are some of the must things that need to happen for like a good experience? Because a lot of times in the whole real estate, people maybe like the end product, but they don't really maybe care for the experience.
Sure.
What are some of the must things that need to happen for a buyer, whatever, build their own house to have a good experience?
Well, if you're a glutton for punishment, you want to build your own house, which I don't recommend, and I'm saying that again. First of all, you have to concentrate on the infrastructure of where you're building. A lot of homes here, for whatever reason, are actually built below the line of the street. If you're building below the line of the street, you need to correct that problem in one way or the other. Either you need to raise the house, you need to raise the level.
Seems like they're always correcting the land here before they.
Well, we live in a mountainous country,
so
but you have to consider drainage is very important, because we have a very interesting thing about our climate here, that 80% of the time it works fine, and 20% of the time when we get really, really hard rains, all of the problems that were not corrected when you built the house all come back. That's when people start getting flooding into their house. I know a guy who lives not far from here. Spent $400,000 to build his house. A beautiful house, but they built it literally at ground level, and when it rains really hard, it floods.
So, man, this whole thing is fraught with peril, Dan.
It's fraught with peril.
If you don't sort out good, if you don't hire a solid contractor, somebody that's working for you, they could build on like not level land just from the very start.
That's right.
You're screwed. And you're not going to know that necessarily.
And how expensive will that be to fix once you realize that you need to fix it? Because you have to consider something which is different from what we have. If you build in the United States, you will pour your foundation, and a building inspector will come out and say, no, that foundation doesn't work because you have to have a piece of rebar every 6 inches has to be running through, and if you don't have it there, you need to re-pour that. And they will tell you that. Here, the only thing that they can... That's what they do, and in many cases people their construction goes 6 months longer because the inspector is such a stickler. However, that being said, in this country the only thing they care about is that you paid for a building permit. Aside from that, they don't really care. Now there are codes, and if you hire an electrician, he will come and build it to the code, and if you do a plumber, come build it to the code. There's not that many plumbers here, though. That's another thing. Plumbing is not most people have picked up plumbing along the way, but they will build your entire house without plumbing vents, for example. There's issues like that. So that's why you need to understand what the codes are in many cases to make sure that you don't have to deal with these problems later.
Man.
I'm not trying to encourage you, but
Why are we making this video, Dan? This is neat.
Well, no, because the point is we're making this video because, well, Mike Allen said I could save myself 40% when I bought my property.
Which I guess is substantial, but if
Which is
things go
substantial.
wrong, that 40% may be zero
Exactly.
real quick.
And it's a very expensive, errors in construction, because remember, a house is literally 10,000 details. Literally. And it only takes one detail
to be messed up.
to be problematic, absolutely.
So what would you say would be some of the most common mistakes that people would make that are building?
Common mistake number one is not providing aggregate drainage for your property and making sure that your property slopes properly, that it has trenches around the property. You have to make sure that no matter what happens, all the water will drain away from your house. That's rule number one. And because of the topography here, this isn't a flat country.
No.
So some houses will be above the road, and those houses are great, and some houses will be slightly below the road. And you can build below the road, but you're going to need to make your house above the road,
Yes.
one way or the other.
Yeah.
That can add another $2,000 to your construction, just right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Just changing your level.
Anything else? Any other big mistakes people make?
Second big mistake is
Thinking they can do it.
well, second big mistake.
Getting in, they start it and they're so knee deep into it they wish they never started. You know,
Which I have.
they're in the middle of it and they go, "Why did I do this?"
Most second thing that you have to remember is that not everything is easy to get all the time. So it's better, but now, especially with what's going on with the quarantine, supply chains are starting to be disrupted. So one time I had to delay a construction project by a week because I needed 6 PVC elbows, which is literally a 30-cent item that nobody had in the whole area. And when they finally ordered them, they were supposed to get 20 and they only got 6. So imagine your whole construction goes for an extra week because you're waiting for $10 in merchandise that you just can't get your hands on. And so those types of issues exist as well. What I recommend that you do is you should always have several sets of eyes on whatever it is that you're doing. And if you don't know, if you've never done it before, then it might be worth it to you to pay a second contractor to come in and look over the first contractor's work. And I'm not saying...
It seems like it.
Because people here are very good at trying to find flaws in other people's work, but you can actually take advantage of that and use it to your advantage. Because if you... Putting up block, anybody can stick blocks. But if you haven't gotten your levels right, if you haven't designed your infrastructure right, if you're siting your home in a bad spot, those are the mistakes that you make. The guy setting one block on top of each other and packing it down, that's not where you get the mistakes in your
Are
construction.
most people buying their materials right here in Costa Rica, or are they coming from somewhere else?
I
mean, if you're
I've done
obviously
both.
if you're gringo, usually you're not going to buy a little, you're not going to build a little Tico house normally.
Sure.
You're going to build something, more what you
Comfortable.
like
That's
a couple $100,000 or
That's
whatever.
right.
So, and since it is attention to details, Costa Rica's not really known for their, their decorations or
That's
their
right.
designer gene or whatever. So, where are people getting supplies? Are they actually getting them here? Is everything here? You just got to find it.
Most things are here. If you're looking to save a little bit of money, we have in the past imported wiring, switches, small details. Large, heavy items, you get them here. Steel, you get here. Block, you get here. If you, for example, want $400 chandeliers, it might be cheaper to import your own $400 chandeliers from Florida than it will be to buy them here, because then there'll be $600 chandeliers here. Or you might decide the other route and you pay somebody to actually make it out of wrought iron and you have it made here, be a slightly different design, but you can take advantage of the artisanship here as well. There is a lot of talent in this country, but it takes a little bit of time to find it.
Yes, that's very true. So we keep talking about our friend Bob. Bob built a house. He's a gringo. Now,
Bob built a hotel and then he built a house.
Oh yeah, up here.
So
that's
and,
right.
and that was another project because that we
Now,
started out.
did he know what he was doing?
Or
was this just a brainchild that he was like, I want to build something?
We had an idea. He wanted to have a hotel, and it was very reasonable. It was a very ugly apartment building. I'm sure we could get
La
it.
Fortuna Suites, if you want to look that
La
up.
Fortuna Suites, now one of the top hotels in La Fortuna, which is expanding right now. but that was originally a very low-end apartment
I remember, I saw it. Yeah.
and it was built with interesting things like, for example, at the time they didn't put rebar in the blocks around the house in the front. They just never put steel through it because when they were building, they decided that they didn't have the funds for it. So now we had to come in and deal with issues like that. And that's what you always have to remember, is that especially if you buy anything here that's old, and when I say old, more than 20 years old, there's going
to be shortcuts.
There wasn't a lot of money circulating around, and so when they should have used half-inch rebar, they'll use a quarter-inch rebar, which might be rusted out.
Plumbing was like that too, wasn't it?
Plumbing is still like that.
A lot of substandard plumbing that you would never know if you don't know.
Plumbing is still like that.
You're like, I see a pipe there, but...
That's right. Or a fun thing here, they don't put shut-off valves on a house. So that means that if your toilet starts flooding, you can't just turn off your toilet and keep living in your house. You literally have to shut off the water in the whole house.
Now, was Bob knowledgeable when he started?
He had done a little bit of it, but I had done so many remodeling projects that it wasn't a big deal.
But was he? No, I guess my point is, when he started, where was he at in his experience of building?
Oh, he hadn't done anything here yet. That was his first project.
Well, he had you though.
Yeah.
Which obviously is a big help, right? I mean,
if you don't know, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I lost money on that job because there were so many additional issues on that home that we found once we actually started tearing into things.
You saw there were problems.
And so, you can charge clients for certain things, but you can't charge clients for everything and still, have them feel like they're being taken care of. So there's always a level of that. But the point is, when you should not assume anything here when you're building, like, well, of course they built it with this. No, there's no assumptions on whatever's done. It's fraught with problems, which is why I recommend that you know what you're doing before you start investing. I'll tell you another story. A friend of mine who actually lives not far from here in Wade with that same house that is now flooding, he went the right way. He hired a contractor, he hired an architect, and he was living on the site. So he did all three of those.
That's pretty good.
He did exactly.
Got some eyes on there, which is, I think, always, no matter what your experience level.
Absolutely. No,
you need to be
ideal.
Around. Yes.
And even with that, originally the cost that he was given for this house was about $250,000 in construction. About halfway through the job, they came back and raised his price more than $100,000.
Is that kind of normal though everywhere in the world?
I don't think to that level. I mean, I could see coming back for another 5 or 10% because the cost of materials change, things like that. You'd be very open with a client. But a job going up 50% in the middle of the job when the specs have not changed. Yes, and what do you do?
So where do contracts come in on all this?
Contracts.
Are they?
I mean, he had a contract, but in this particular. There's always something that can be found because there's always something unforeseen when you're digging in the ground.
We couldn't have known that when we were giving you an estimate.
That's right.
They could say that about pretty much anything.
That's right. I mean, even right now, like I said, with the COVID situation, you could argue that you have to charge more because it's getting difficult to source materials, and so now we're spending more time to get materials, or we're actually having to send a truck to bring them from San Jose. Those types of issues, they're unforeseen. There's nothing you can do about it, but they do add to the cost of the job.
Wow, man!
It's complicated. It's absolutely complicated, and the thing about it is, you could come down here and buy a perfectly decent little concrete house for $40,000, and if your taste is not too high, you could be done with that. And that's what most people here do, is they live in something like that. But if you have this idea that I had a 3,000 square foot house where I live, I want to build the same or better than what I had. Of course it can be done, and probably.
Well, yeah, it should be said. There's a lot of nice houses here.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
And in many cases,
even here,
the quality will be better than what they had back in the United States because it'll all be solid concrete and welded steel, and so from a level of structure, from a level of quality, they will get a good quality job. But there's so many factors that influence making sure that you get a 100% job. That's usually where the costs come in. Not to mention the fact that it rains all the time here, which is another major issue in terms of how long things take to finish the job. When we were doing the house for Bob, literally the day we broke ground, the rain started, and it rained for the next 2 months.
Yeah, which can be substantial cost if you're like, right. Especially if you're building something bigger with laborers, and
everything is with that. It's a big difference carrying a rock through the mud than it is carrying a rock on flat ground. I mean, little things like that, which we joke about, but that one house that we did for him, that was 4,000 blocks. So just to give you an idea of 4,000 blocks that have to be trekked through the mud now, as opposed to not so, makes a big difference in cost.
So I guess to sum this all up, you're basically saying unless you have a passion to really build your own dream home, you probably shouldn't be doing it.
Unless you're an adventurous spirit, I recommend finding something that's relatively done, and you can always make little upgrades here, install some new cabinets, make some different furniture. I recommend most people just deal with that.
And you would have to know, I mean, even if you came from a construction background, there's still so many other things you would need to know in another country.
That's right, absolutely.
You know, and just knowing Spanish, just that part, there's one right there.
Absolutely. And there is also, I still do this to this day because my Spanish is good, but it's still not perfect. But when I want to buy something from a new seller, I have a Costa Rican call him and negotiate with them first. Because I want to get the right price.
Right, exactly.
I don't want to get the
I've been
price.
giving that advice forever. Never call anybody yourself here.
Right.
You got to have some Tico do.
We should actually have a little service about that. That would not be a bad service.
You heard it here first. You want any kind of... No, that's true. Well, especially it happens in the rental properties too. People, gringo walks up there and goes,
Of course.
"Cuánto cuesti?"
Right.
Cuesta. And there's already $200 added right there,
Sure.
just because whatever. All right, man. Well, that wasn't good. So, I guess you're saying don't do that unless you're really.
Well, most people look. We know we've been living here a while. The majority of people who come down here only stay for a few years, right?
Well, I think that, but I think most people don't think that's going to happen.
No, I understand that, but the odds
Right.
the odds are in your favor that you're not going to stay. So that's why you always tell people to come down here and rent for a year before they even decide to do anything. But on top of that, a lot of people who are here, they're not here full time. So, I mean, for example, I have some houses in a gated community that have security. If you're only planning on being here 3 months a year, you need to be considering
Well,
that.
that's a good option, security.
Absolutely.
Right
No, because if you have a house that you plan on leaving for 6 months a year, well, yes, you have to have a gardener maintaining it. Who's going to keep an eye on your house? Who's going to clean your house every once in a while? Because just leaving a house for 2 months, mold starts to grow. Things like that.
No, there's a lot of reasons you want somebody watching your house.
So that adds a whole different level of complication to it, which is fine. But these are just additional factors that you have to consider if you want to be happy with your investment here.
So what's going to be the rebuttal? Because there's going to be a lot of builders here in Costa Rica that might see this video and go, "I'm a builder, and we do this, this, and this." I mean, what would they say to this video? What's their rebuttal to you, Dan? Are they going to be going, that's not true, or you know what I mean?
I mean, there are companies that do what they call llave en mano, which is they hand you the key. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist.
Are those custom even that way?
Well,
or
it's usually, that's what I'm saying, is it's usually a certain level of construction, which is fine.
More cookie cutterish?
It's more cookie cutterish, I would say. I mean, mostly just concrete, steel, tile. There's nothing wrong with it, but like I said, if you're looking for moldings and you're looking for high-end...
See, don't you think I think most gringos are looking for that.
I
think they're looking for the
If this is going to be the house you retire in,
I think they're looking for light fixtures from Panama or whatever.
That's right, exactly. And from that level of it, that's why I typically say if you're going to do that, it's not a bad idea to pay somebody to just deliver you a house. But then you're going to have to consider, like Christine did that, God rest her soul, she just died. But she had come to me and I had given her a price on a house. And she decided she went with another builder who gave her a much better price. Well, the builder who gave her the much better price, he built the house, and then she realized, well, that didn't include windows, that didn't include a ceiling, that didn't include tile on the floor, that didn't include fixtures. That was basically just walls and a roof, and they ran the electrical and they ran the plumbing. There is a toilet,
which is why the price was better, Dan.
Which is why they did such a great price. And then she didn't realize, and then she literally spent the next 2 to 3 years finishing the house,
yes.
Little by little, because then, workers don't show up. There's a lot of that, obviously, as well. Right. So, and that's just part of living in a place where the attitude is pura vida. I mean, we start with that attitude, right? But yes, so in general, yes, you can go to a builder who can build you a decent level of home. I'm not taking away, and there's some who do it very well.
Oh, you said there's good building.
Well, from structural aspect, it's excellent. From design aspect, I've seen some very nice homes as well, but it's most people that I see who are with North American taste, when they come here, they have a certain level of vision, and usually that takes the building to a next level, which is fine, but it adds another 25% to it. If you went, for example, Bob's house had teak flooring. Very few homes here actually
have teak flooring.
And had an entire wall of windows that all face the volcano. Normally a house here, we've seen multiple, I think this building here actually doesn't have a window on the side facing the volcano. So little aspects like that. There's a house, Carol Bagwell's house, do you know who Carol is?
Yeah.
Who they decided not to put windows facing the volcano, and you have to look around the corner like that to see the volcano.
That is so weird to me.
It is weird, but the whole point is if you're not on top of everything, you will end up with strange idiosyncrasies like that.
Well, I think if this video didn't do anything, it definitely gave people something to think about and consider if they're going to go this route. Because obviously it's doable. I've seen beautiful homes here.
Of course.
And, we all have, but it is something to consider, because just because the end product looks beautiful and is beautiful, it could have been the road to hell to get there.
You can find lots of houses here that are beautiful, but I guarantee you will never find an odor that says it got done way quicker than I expected and slightly cheaper. Yes, you will never hear those two stories. So that's something. And one thing else I will say, if you were going to buy something that's done, which I typically recommend, even if that's not your own, even if that's not the final house, it's better to buy something that has a little structure on it that you can live in while you're supervising the main structure, that in the future can become a mother-in-law suite. Then you have to dig a moat around it if it's for the mother-in-law. But aside from that, if you plan to do that, hire a building inspector also. It's worth the $200 or $300 that you're going to spend to have an inspector go out and look at that property. So that way, that $300 doesn't turn into $3,000 for something that the realtor just said, oh yes, it's a great property, there's no cracks in the walls, and here's your contract, and you sign it. You're good to go.
All right, Dan. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I'm Michael Allen, TravelCostaRicaNow.com, real estate. Peace, guys. Hope it helps.